With Breath of the Wild and its prequel Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, we have a pretty good understanding of what happened in both the past and present of this incarnation of Hyrule. When Age of Calamity is released, we will have 2/3 of the story to chew through and digest whilst we await the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Now, as excited as I am for Age of Calamity and the opportunity to get a better insight into the events of the Calamity itself, it is still largely a story that we already know. Whilst I don't doubt there will be some nice surprises along the way, I still think that we will come away from it wanting the next part of the story even more, and the excitement of witnessing an all-new series of events set in this era. So this video will go over 5 mini theories of things that we could potentially see, as well as a bit of a wish list of things that I would like to see in the upcoming Breath of the Wild sequel. The mysterious villain's return. Okay, so let's start with an easy one. With the recently revealed mystery person in Age of Calamity, the biggest questions I've seen throughout the community are: who is this person? Will they return in Breath of the Wild 2? If you haven't already seen my previous video where I theorised as to who this person could be, I'll link that video in the description below and in the top right corner of the screen, so be sure to check that out. The main point in that video speaks about how this character could be an alter ego of Ganondorf, or a loyal Gerudo follower and most likely the fortune teller. We know that this character is absent for the events of Breath of the Wild, but could we see him, or indeed her, make a return in the sequel? In the trailer, we can see that Ganondorf has awoken, and at the same time we see him return, he's in a mummified state, similar to the Sheikah monks. Well, what if his physical body is still in a weakened state after having been dormant for tens of thousands of years, and until he's fully recovered requires the aid of a quote-unquote right-hand man? Maybe we'll see this mystery figure acting as such, and following in the footsteps of previous antagonists like Girahim, acting as the primary antagonist that follows our heroes around while Ganondorf recovers in the background. Also in the trailer, we see what looks to be Hyrule Castle take to the sky. Maybe this is a defensive measure by Ganondorf, and this mystery character is there to keep him out of harm's way until he fully recovers his physical form, or while this mystery figure combats Link and Zelda down on the surface. Well, maybe we'll get some kind of allusion to this in Age of Calamity. The return of the champion spirits. Okay, so I know that we have that final scene in which the champions and King Rome fade away, the assumption being that they've fulfilled their roles and free to move on and find peace after 100 years. But what if they're not quite finished? With the revelation to come that Ganon was not just a malicious evil entity, but was in fact a man who Link and Zelda discover and witness waking up, what if the champion's spirits become aware that the fight is far from over? Again, this one comes down to theory and speculation more than anything else, but one of the common theories surrounding Breath of the Wild and its sequel is the Luminous Stones, housing the spirits of the dead, and that part isn't simply a theory, but is actually the description given to the stone within the game itself. With this in mind, many people believe that the Luminous Stones seen in the trailer may actually contain the souls of the ancient Zonai tribe, possibly as part of some magical sacrifices or ritual on their part to seal and contain Ganon's physical form, or alternatively, it could be the souls of ancient Hylians. If either of these theories turned out to be true, then we may very well see a situation where the spirits of long past Hylians or Zonai make a return to aid Zelda and Link in their journey to defeat Ganondorf. And if this were to happen, then what's to say we don't see the champions return in some capacity as well? This one may be a stretch, as Breath of the Wild seems to make clear that the spirits of the champions and King Rome have all fulfilled their duty, and so their reasons to remain are entirely unclear, and so this one sits more in the wish list of things rather than something I think will happen. But I do think it would be really cool to see the champions return to help, and in regards to King Rome, I actually have a future video planned that dives into his story a little more, and that video will talk about my hopes for his return in the sequel and the opportunity to make amends and reconcile with his daughter, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. The end of the Curse of Demise. So this is another one I've seen many other people speculate. The idea that the Curse of Demise will finally be broken in this sequel. Without getting too deep into that particular theory, the reasons for people believing this focus on the idea that in Breath of the Wild's era, some things surrounding the eternal cycle of the three main characters have changed from previous incarnations, leading some to believe the curse is weakening. For example, the Triforce seems to be in the possession of Zelda alone, and seems to have been lost to time as a recognizable artifact. Link doesn't seem to need the Triforce of Courage to take on and seemingly defeat Ganon. Ganon's being immensely powerful even without the Triforce of Power, and the Master Sword able to be damaged and seemingly running out of energy. These things just all seem to be a bit out of place, which makes us think that the established set of rules for a Zelda game and the repetitive cycle throughout the time periods are about to change or just outright be removed altogether. Also, I have a future video lined up where I theorise that the Zelda franchise is maybe being rebooted with this Breath of the Wild trilogy, which ties a little into this point. If that turns out to be true, and we are in fact witnessing a reboot, then maybe the end of Demise's curse and the removal of certain constraints is a part of that overall plan for the franchise. I mean, don't get me wrong, I always enjoyed the idea of these characters being connected across time in a cycle that brings them together each time to decide the fate of Hyrule, but I also think that if Breath of the Wild is any indication of the future of the franchise, then it's pretty obvious that a much bigger goal they have is in its storytelling, which ironically I realise that game kinda missed the mark, but what I mean is that I get the impression Nintendo had way more fun and more interest in telling a more personal story without needing to rinse and repeat the same old formula of you have the spirit of the hero, Link, and time has awoken you to fight the great evil and you must fight the princess and together stop this evil from claiming the Triforce, the usual. As iconic as that overarching plot is, I do wonder if it's starting to grow a little stale, and moving forward, no matter how good a story they make in future, they'll always be tied down by these points without much wiggle room, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them remove the curse structure from the games and allow themselves more freedom and creativity in their stories. Maybe time will tell. A heroic sacrifice. Breath of the Wild and the upcoming Age of Calamity certainly have no issues with tugging at our heartstrings when it comes to feeling the loss of its characters. In the case of Breath of the Wild, most people will agree that the story was fairly non-existent. For a game that can take you on a journey for hundreds of hours, the story was such a small part of it that it's almost a wonder as to why we all feel such a strong connection to it, and I put that down to the personalities of the characters. Personally, I sit on the side of the fence regarding the voice acting, that it was a great addition to Zelda, and I only hope they decide to keep that inclusion in future games. I think that if this game didn't have voice acting with this rather bland, sort of non-existent story, it would have been far worse. The voice acting really helped us believe these main characters were more real and relatable than any previous characters, and even though our time with them was way too short to really get invested in characters as we normally would, we all found ourselves just loving these characters, and, at least in my case, almost felt about them as actual sort of friends and companions, and so as the memories went on and we have our moments with them, it became a really heartbreaking reality that they were killed. Luckily, Age of Calamity will give us some more time with them, but, well, we all know how that's going to work out. So what does this have to do with Breath of the Wild 2? Well, with the sequel seemingly taking a much darker tone than the previous two games, I can't believe for a second that we're going to make it to those end credits without crying our eyes out over the loss of someone that we hold dear, and there's an even bigger chance it could be a far greater death than those of the four champions. With the likelihood of this game's story being of such an epic level, I think there's a good chance we could end up seeing a great heroic sacrifice. For example, imagine if Zelda pushes herself to her limits to stop Ganondorf with her power, and the result is the destruction of Ganondorf but at the cost of her own life. Or this mysterious energy that infects Link in the trailer is essentially a ticking clock, grants him powers he needs to stop Ganondorf, but also at the cost of his life. It may be a risky move to have one of the main two characters perish in this way, but with a series of Zelda games breaking away from the norms and sort of subverting expectations that we have of a Zelda game, I don't think it's too far-fetched to imagine that this could happen. A return to the Dark World. Okay, so stay with me on this one. In all honesty, maybe I would put this one more on the side of things that I would like to see, rather than having a convincing theory explaining the likelihood of this happening. So we know that Breath of the Wild takes place in the same Hyrule as the first game, and I've heard many theories and general discussions on how Nintendo can change it up enough that we don't feel like we're getting just a recycled playground. Some of those ideas go from introducing a whole new location based underground in a series of cave networks, based on the impressions given in the teaser trailer, and others suggest things like expanding the borders of Hyrule to include new locations to the north and west of Hyrule, past the large chasms, or even new islands out at sea. And whilst I don't think any of these are impossible, it doesn't really alter the mainland Hyrule, which would, for the most part, just be the same. Some other ideas suggested are a much larger Malice infestation, which blocks off areas of Hyrule, making the game far more linear, which again would find a way to alter the pacing and give the game that older Zelda feel, but that still doesn't really affect Hyrule too much. And I'm not suggesting Hyrule needs to be altered to be enjoyable, but after many hours poured into this version of Hyrule, I think players would want to feel like it was really worth exploring again. And of course, one of the biggest desires that we all have for this game is a return to the traditional Zelda dungeon format, which I believe is what Nintendo will be implementing, and maybe it'll be as simple as just picking locations in Hyrule we've already been to and stating, oh look, here's a hidden temple here containing plenty of items and magical powers, mystical beasts, and potential doorways to sacred realms and everything that we need to defeat Ganondorf, but we just never knew about it, and it was never documented in any of our history books, and those ancient Sheikah, they never spoke of it or documented it in any way, shape or form, and guess what? We never discovered it during the excavation of the Sheikah tech across the whole of Hyrule. Yeah, maybe it'll be that. If it is, honestly I just wouldn't buy into that explanation. For me, it would feel quite cheap to just do it that way. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd enjoy it, and I'd enjoy playing it, but I just feel like it would be a cop-out if I'm honest. So maybe I'm being too ambitious, but what I would love to see is a situation where we have the same Hyrule for the most part, but there's a reasonable, logical, and an in-universe logic appropriate way that we could change the land of Hyrule into something new, with new landmarks and locations, and make the entire continent worth exploring. A return to the Dark World. So just imagine that at some stage in the game, we're thrown through a portal, Link picks himself up off the floor to gaze out onto Hyrule, which is now completely different from what he was expecting to see. It's now been bathed in an eerie light of purple and heavy black clouds. Hyrule Castle is transformed into a gargantuan, demonic-looking tower. Death Mountain also has an immense fortress atop of it. The Gerudo Desert is a wasteland of ash and poisonous cloud pockets coated in a torrential thunderstorm, but somewhere in that fog you can see the silhouette of something big, maybe a temple or a pyramid of some kind. You gaze to where the Great Plateau was, and instead you're greeted with a giant crater surrounded by a huge vortex of greenish-blue energy swirling around the gaping wound in Hyrule, the sound of wailing and screaming the closer you get. The souls of the damned, you look around and find yourself in a graveyard haunted by Poes. Now, how would you not want to explore that version of Hyrule all over? With an overall darker theme to the game, imagine a situation where Link is thrown into a dark world like this. Maybe it's a reality in which Ganondorf has won, and the realization that should he fail, his own reality stands to end up this same way. I know I'm being too ambitious here, and I don't expect this to happen at all, but I just keep thinking of how incredible it would be. And so there you have it, 5 things that I would like to see in Breath of the Wild sequel, as well as a couple of things being little mini theories. What do you think of this list and the chances of seeing such things? Let me know in the comments below, and a huge thank you for checking out the video. Please, I hope you'll consider giving the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already to help support the channel and to be updated on future videos. You can follow me on Twitter by clicking the link in the description. So as you would have noticed in the background of this one, I've been currently working on just some little fun mini sort of sticker designs, and I really hoped to have the full set complete for this video. Unfortunately, I just kind of ran out of time and I didn't want to delay putting the video out, so by the end of this video I only had 2 of those complete, but I will be working on finishing the others and also just doing some more that haven't been shown here. If you quite like the idea of these stickers, let me know. I still need to investigate where and how I could make these into actual sellable stickers, if that's a thing I can do. So let me know what you think, and if you have any ideas or suggestions for fun little sticker designs that you'd like to see me do, again, let me know in the comments below. Stay safe everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.